to day 3 of the Crucible. Now today's going to be a little bit long, so please bear with me. All right, the newest character and the most important character that we met yesterday was John Proctor. All right, so let's talk about his character for a little bit. He's a farmer in Salem. He's a very proud person, and he stands very firmly on his beliefs. One thing that they said about him, there's a lot of text from the author about his character, and so I'm just summing this up for you. He hates hypocrites. And this is one of the reasons that he has a hard time going to church, because he feels like there are a lot of people in the church, particularly the minister, who say and do one thing on Sundays and then say and do another thing the rest of the week. He is also having a lot of internal conflict throughout the entire play because of this affair that had just been revealed in day 2 between Abigail and John Proctor. And he feels like he himself is a hypocrite. You know, he wants to be an honorable man. He wants to be a moral man, but he knows he has sinned and sinned gravely. And so he feels such internal conflict because on the one hand, he wants to hide the affair because that's the natural instinct, is to hide the affair from the community. He's telling Abigail, you will not speak of this again. I will never touch you again. This affair is over. It never happened. Meaning, if you mention it, I'll call you a liar. He's trying as hard as he can to cover it up. But on the other hand, is that the best thing to do? Is that the just thing to do? Or should he be a man and admit to it and ask for forgiveness from everybody he's offended, right? All right, so there's his conflict. Here are his motives. The first motive, obviously, he had an affair with Abigail and wants to keep that hidden to save his reputation and his wife's good name. He also wants to be a better man and do the morally right thing. Okay, so just as a reminder of who he is, we are going to pick back up where we left off. There is some summary here about the Nurse family, Rebecca and Francis Nurse. Remember, they own a huge plot of land. Thomas Putnam argues that some of that land belongs to him. That creates tension between the Nurse family and the Putnam family. Also, remember that Rebecca and Francis Nurse were such a good honorable, upstanding, moral, level-headed people that everybody had such a good feeling about them. They were very well respected in the community. Okay, so everything is quiet. Rebecca walks across the room to the bed. Gentleness exudes from her. She's a very motherly figure. Betty is quietly whimpering, her eyes shut. Rebecca simply stands over the child, who gradually quiets. Rebecca is the only person who has common sense here. She walks into the room very calmly, unlike every other single character that we have met so far. Mr. and Mrs. Putnam, they come in a fury. John Proctor, Reverend Paris, everybody who's come into the room so far has come in very upset and very concerned about Betty, and she simply goes over and stands next to the bed. And immediately, Betty, eyes still closed, quiets. So let's see how this plays out.
What have you done?
What do you make of it, Rebecca?
Goody Nurse, will you go to my Ruth and see if you can wake her?
I think she'll wake in time. Pray calm yourselves. I have 11 children, and I'm 26 times a grandma, and I've seen them all through their silly seasons. And when they come upon them, well, they'll run the devil bow-legged, keeping up with their mischief. I think she'll wake, huh? When she's tired of it. Huh? Oh, the spirit of a child. It's like a child. You can never catch it by running after it. No, you must stand still. And for love, it will soon itself come back.
Aye, that's the truth of it, Rebecca.
But this is no silly season, Rebecca. My Ruth is bewildered. She cannot eat.
Perhaps she isn't hungered yet. Oh, I hope you've not decided to go in search of loose spirits. Mr. Paris, I've heard promise of that outside.
A wide opinion's running in the parish that the devil may be among us. I would satisfy them that they are wrong.
Then let you come out and call them wrong. Did you consult with the wardens before you called this minister to look for devils?
He's not coming to look for devils.
Then what's he coming for?
There be children dying in the village, mister.
I seen none dying. This society will not be a bag to swing around your head, Mr. Putnam. Did you call a meeting?
I am sick of meetings. Cannot the man turn his head without he have a meeting?
He may turn his head, but not to hell.
Pray, John, be calm. Oh, Mr. Paris, I think you'd best send Mr. Hale back as soon as he come. This will start us all to arguing again in the society. We thought to have peace this year. I think we should rely on the doctor now. And good prayer.
The doctor is baffled, Rebecca.
Well, if so he is, then let us go to God for the cause of it. There is prodigious danger in the seeking out of loose spirits. I fear it. I fear it. Let us rather blame ourselves. Then...
How may we blame ourselves? I am one of 9 sons. The Putnam seed have peopled this province, and yet I have but one child left of 8, and now she shrivels?
I cannot fathom that.
Aye, but I must. You think it God's work that you should never lose a child? Or a grandchild either? And I bury all but one? There are wheels within wheels in this village, aye, and fires within fires.
When Reverend Hale comes, you will proceed to look for signs of witchcraft here.
You cannot command Mr. Paris. We vote by name in this society, not by acreage.
I have never heard you worried so on the society, Mr. Proctor. I do not think I've seen you at Sabbath meeting since snow flew.
I have trouble enough with that. I come 5 miles to hear him preach only hellfire and bloody damnation. Well, take it to heart, Mr. Paris. And many others who stay away from church these days because you hardly ever mention God anymore.
Why, that's a drastic charge.
Now, it is somewhat true. There are many that quail to bring their children.
Well, I do not preach for children, Rebecca. It is not the children who are unmindful of their obligations toward this ministry.
Are there really those unmindful?
I should say the better half of Salem Village.
And more than that.
Where is my wood? My contract provides I be supplied with all my firewood. I am waiting since November for a stick. And even in November, I had to show my frostbitten hands like some London beggar.
You are allowed £6 a year to buy your wood, Mr. Paris.
I regard that £6 as part of my salary. I am paid little enough without I spend £6 on firewood.
60 plus 6 for firewood.
My salary is £66, Mr. Proctor. I am not some preaching farmer with a book under my arm. I am a graduate of Harvard College.
Aye, and well instructed in arithmetic.
You would look far for a man of my kind for £60 a year, Mr. Corey. I am not used to this poverty. I gave up a thrifty business in the Barbados to serve the Lord, and I cannot fathom it why I am persecuted here. I cannot offer up one proposition, but it be met with a howling riot of argument. I have often wondered if the devil be in it somewhere. I cannot understand you people otherwise.
Mr. Paris, you are the first minister ever to demand the deed to this house.
Man, don't a minister deserve a house to live in?
To live in, yes. But to ask ownership is like you shall own the meeting house itself. On the last meeting I were at, you talked so long on deeds and mortgages, I thought it were an auction.
I want a mark of confidence is all. I am your 3rd minister in 7 years. I do not wish to be thrown out like the cat at the whim of some majority. No, you people, you seem not to comprehend that the minister is the Lord's man in the church. He is not to be so easily crossed and contradicted.
Aye.
There will either be obedience or the church will burn, as hell is burning.
Can you speak 1 minute without we land in hell? I am sick of hell.
It's not for you to say what is good for you to hear.
I may speak my heart, I think.
What? Are we Quakers? We are not Quakers here yet, Mr. Proctor. And you may tell that to your followers.
My followers?
Yes, your followers. There is a party in this church. I am not blind. There is a faction and a party.
Against you.
Against him and all authority.
Why, then I must find it and join it.
Okay, so let's stop here and talk about 2 new things we've discovered. The first is Rebecca Nurse. Remember, she's got the most level head of all these people. And what does she say when she comes and stands next to Betty by her bed, and Betty stops whimpering for a moment and she calms down? Rebecca Nurse just laughs and basically said, "This isn't witchcraft. What is it?" She says it's a temper tantrum. She says this is a child who is being a child. And as parents, how do you catch a child that is running away from you? Here's what you don't do. You don't chase the child. If the child is running away from you and you chase it, you're only going to fuel their energy to run even more because they are getting your attention, right? And so she likens what is happening here to Betty to like chasing a child. She says, all of this panic that you're doing right now is only fueling her behavior. And so what you need to do is stand still. If you stand still and the child sees that you're not chasing them anymore, they will wonder what has gone wrong, and they'll turn around and they'll come to you, right? And so she says, likewise, you need to stand still. You need to stop all of this conversation about witchcraft and ignore her, and she will eventually snap out of it. It's a phase. And then Mrs. Putnam pipes in and says, well, what about my Ruth? She refuses to eat. And Rebecca Nurse says, well, like I said before, maybe she's not hungry. And so, and this is another very typical situation that you would find with a small child who is throwing a temper tantrum. When they refuse to eat, there's nothing you can do to make them eat. Okay. So Rebecca Nurse knows what's going on. Everybody else is convinced it's witchcraft. And I think more than anything, it's because they have dug themselves into this hole so far. And because so many people are saying witchcraft, they kind of have to keep going with that story. All right, there's another thing that's going on. There's a lot of tension in the room between the men. Mr. Putnam, Mr. Parris, and Mr. Proctor. Okay, it's very confusing. I understand. They are all P names. Okay, so one of the things that they dislike about Reverend Parris is that his sermons are all about fire and brimstone. And John Proctor raises the, notion that, why I haven't been to church in so long? It's because you never talk about the redeeming side of God. You always talk about hell and damnation. And he doesn't really appreciate it. So that's why he doesn't come to church anymore. And he's also griping. Reverend Parris also takes this opportunity to gripe about how he feels he's being underpaid. He feels like he should be paid more, and also he should be given firewood for free instead of having to pay that out of his salary. He also feels that he should own the house that the minister lives in, so the church would have like a common house that the minister would live in. And if the minister moved to another city, or if a new pastor came in to take his spot, that pastor would live in that house too. So the house belongs to the church, not the minister. And so Reverend Parris feels like that's not fair, that he should also be owed a house. Okay, so this just goes to show another thing that Proctor, Putnam, and a lot of the other people in society, remember they talk about that faction that wants to see Parris out of power. That faction has some grievances against him, and one of those is the fact that they feel he's very money hungry. Okay, let's get back to the text. Now we're about to see more bickering between the men, and I love Rebecca Nurse. She sees her way out because she thinks everybody is acting a little ridiculous. So let's continue.
Does not mean that.
He confessed it now.
I mean it solemnly, Rebecca. I like not the smell of this authority.
No, you cannot break charity with your minister. You're another kind, John. Clasp his hand. Make your peace.
I have crops to sow and lumber to drag home. Come along, Giles. Let's find the party. He says there's a party.
I've changed my opinion of this man, John. Mr. Parrish, I beg your pardon. I never thought you had so much iron in you.
Thank you, Giles.
It suggests to the mind what the trouble be among us all these years. Now think on it. Wherefore is everybody suing everybody else? Now think on it now. It's a deep thing and dark as a pit. I have been 6 times in court this year.
Is it the devil's fault a man may not bid you good morning without you clap him for defamation? You're old, Giles. You're not hearing so well as you did.
John Proctor, I've only last month collected £4 damages for you publicly saying I burned the roof off your house. And I would go to court again.
I never said no such thing, but I paid you for it. So I hope I can call you deaf without charge. Giles, help me drag my lumber home.
A moment, Mr. Proctor. What lumber is that you're dragging, if I may ask you?
My lumber from out my forest by the riverside.
Why, we are surely gone wild this year. What anarchy is this? That tract is in my bounds.
It is in your bounds. I bought that tract from Goody Nurse's husband 5 months ago.
Well, he had no right to sell it. It stands clear in my grandfather's will that all the lands between the river and...
Your grandfather had a habit of willing land that never belonged to him, if I may say it plain.
That's God's truth. He nearly willed away my north pasture. But he knew I'd break his fingers before he'd set his name to it. Let's get your lumber home, John. I feel a sudden will to work coming on.
You load one oak of mine, you'll fight to drag it home.
Aye, and we'll win, too, Putnam. This fool and I. Come on.
I'll clap a writ on you, Corey. I'll have my men on you.
Enter Reverend John Hale of Beverly. Mr. Hale is nearing 40, a tight skin.
Okay, we are going to skip this part because it is very lengthy. If you see, it continues all through the next page and over half of the page after that. So the only thing you need to know about this is that Reverend Hale is about 40 years old. He is very scholarly, very well educated. He speaks more like a doctor than he does a minister. He's come to search these girls over to see if this is actual witchcraft, because that is part of his education, is in, dark arts and demonology and witchcraft and possession. And so he knows a little bit more than the rest of them do about this, and so he's going to, assess their symptoms and see what's really going on. The only thing that this really talks about are like the beliefs of the church, and basically pointing out that if you believe in God, you also must believe in the devil. In order for there to be morality in people, there must be temptation and sin all around you. And in order for people to be good, then there has to be evil present as well. So it just shows you that, these people believe, as much as they believe in God, they also believe in the devil that much, that the devil is working amongst them and trying to lead them into sin. Okay, this is where we will stop, and we read all of this on day 3, but I'm going to split it up into 2 sections. So please look for the next sections so that we can finish Act 1.